This video was requested by you guys, so I decided to make it a follow-up of this video. Your jaw doesn't keep growing after your mid-20s. I already talked about that. Somehow that video offended some people sharing their anecdotal evidence. Feel free to share your opinions in the comments. There was also a lot of misunderstanding when it came to the difference between growth and remodeling. I'm not gonna lie and tell you that your jaw will continue growing in your mid-20s, but there are ways to improve the appearance of the jaw, ways to avoid making it worse, and interventions that genuinely change jaw structure. To understand any of this, we need to start with a distinction that a lot of people get wrong or try to mix up. When people say jaw growth, they're usually mixing up two completely different things: jaw development and jaw structure. Jaw structure is the actual skeletal blueprint. It is the maximum potential. It determines the shape and proportion of the maxilla, mandible, and your overall facial height. That structure is overwhelmingly genetic, meaning it is inherited, and it is expressed during specific growth windows: prenatal life, early childhood, and puberty. If you didn't build it during development, you cannot train it later. Jaw development is about how well that genetic blueprint was allowed to express itself. That's influenced by nutrition, breathing, hormone exposure, chewing forces, tongue posture, and overall health during growth. A child with potentially good inheritance who chronically mouth breathes, has forward head posture, soft chews, and eats garbage will have their potential skewed. To understand jaw structure versus development, you can see it in this photo. Most people are in the middle. They have decent genetics but suffered from suboptimal development. This is the structural debt you can still try to pay back, but you need to know the realistic limits of bone remodeling in adulthood. Once development ends, structure does not restart. After skeletal maturity, the mandible does not gain length. The condylar cartilage is no longer a growth center. The epiphyseal activity required for directional bone growth is gone. Osteoblasts still exist, but they operate under remodeling rules, not growth rules. To make it clear, bone remodeling happens for life, but bone growth does not. Anyone claiming otherwise is lying or confused about remodeling. The biggest factor that determines how strong a jaw looks is fat distribution and body fat percentage. Leanness reveals the hidden jaw. Submental fat, lower face adiposity, and buccal fat pads can completely hide even a well-developed mandible. A guy at 15 to 18% body fat and the same guy at 10 to 12% can look like he has two entirely different jawlines. For the majority of men, getting lean does more for their jaw appearance than any device or trend ever will, especially if you have a good structure underneath the fat. So if you're fat, you need to get lean. I will make a video on that. Next, we have muscles, and this is where expectations need to be realistic. The masseter and temporalis muscles can hypertrophy. Increased chewing load can make these muscles thicker and firmer. This can improve jaw width illusion and resting tension in the lower face. This is an enhancement layer, not a structural fix, but still important. Those silicone jaw exercisers, they focus force on one point, creating unnatural, often painful stress on the TMJ, potentially leading to joint disorders. Stick to food, or, if you want, gum. They distribute the force naturally across the dental arch. And if you decide to use mastic gum, pay attention to symmetry. Now, we need to talk about mewing, because this topic is poisoned by half-truths. There were also a lot of copers on my previous video. Mewing can work, in the right context. In children and during puberty, tongue posture plays a real role in maxillary development. The maxilla is connected to the cranial base by sutures that are responsive to sustained forces during growth. Proper tongue posture during these periods can influence palatal width, forward growth of the midface, and overall facial balance. The cope begins when people extend this effect after puberty and try to exaggerate the effects. Once sutures fuse and growth plates close, tongue pressure does not remodel skull shape. At that point, mewing becomes a functional habit, not a structural intervention. But it can still improve your posture, possibly airway function, and improve oral health. It can also slightly affect muscle tone. When these guys claim dramatic bone change from mewing, it's mostly fat loss, posture changes, lighting differences, or confirmation bias with skeletal transformations. Breathing, however, deserves more respect. Chronic mouth breathing alters resting jaw position. It encourages downward and backward mandibular posture, increases facial slackness, and worsens the appearance of the lower third over time. Mouth breathing is just a symptom of a small airway caused by poor development. Your body has to compensate by opening your mouth so you can get enough air. Correcting nasal breathing will restore a more optimal resting position. That alone can improve facial tension and jaw visibility. But these are things you should do earlier on. We rarely talk about the muscles under the chin. They act as a sling for the floor of your mouth. Training these muscles can pull the skin and muscles taut, giving you a sharper neck-to-jaw angle. Doing neck curls can develop these muscles, which will overall enhance the appearance of the jaw. Orthodontics is where things get a bit dangerous, because it can either help or permanently damage facial aesthetics. Traditional camouflage orthodontics often involves extractions and retraction of teeth to fit a bad bite into a small jaw. This pulls the dental arches backward, collapses oral volume, and makes the face appear flatter and more recessed. This is one of the most common ways modern faces are ruined. You need orthodontics that respect facial structure, expansion where appropriate, alignment without retraction, airway-aware planning. These can support jaw appearance. If you're grown with a severely narrow upper jaw, orthodontics can still be incredibly powerful. The most important thing is knowing which treatment offers skeletal change versus mere dental camouflage. Mini implant, assisted rapid palatal expander, is the adult equivalent of a palatal expander. Using temporary skeletal anchors, orthodontists can physically widen a fully fused maxilla. It's a minor surgical procedure, but it's a huge game changer for breathing and facial width. This is actual skeletal change in an adult. You can also look at orthodontic decompensation. This is a critical pre-surgical planning. If you have an underbite or overbite, your teeth often tip to compensate, hiding true skeletal discrepancy. Decompensation moves the teeth to their ideal position over the basal bone, which often makes the jaw imbalance look worse temporarily. But I believe it's essential for maxillofacial surgery. Maxillofacial surgery is the nuclear option, reserved for severe structural malformations. This is skeletal reconstruction. Bimaxillary advancement is the most powerful tool for looksmaxxing a jawline because it changes the actual bone structure. This uses procedures like the BSSO to physically move the recessed mandible forward, and the Lefort 1 osteotomy to move the maxilla. This is where you permanently correct a Class 2 or Class 3 profile. It is advanced, obviously expensive, and requires recovery. A less invasive option is sliding genioplasty. This will separate your chin bone and slide it forward or vertically. It fixes a weak chin, but does not fix a recessed jaw. Know the difference between chin projection and overall jaw projection. Jaw implants can also help to improve contour and silhouette. I've seen a lot of celebrities get implants. When used conservatively, they can enhance aesthetics. When used to compensate for true skeletal problems, they often end up looking fake. I believe the genioplasty is superior as it uses your vascularized bone. It allows 3D movement, heals as one continuous bone, and the attached muscles are repositioned, creating a more natural dynamic. But that's just my opinion.
Here's a patient with a short lower facial third and a deep mentolabial fold. Now, if he sticks his chin out, protrudes his chin forward a little bit more, that is a nice aesthetic, and what's happening, his lower teeth are following the back of his upper teeth, so he's pushing his jaw forward, but also he's opening it up this way. Go back to your normal position. So if you were to do a chin implant in this type of patient, what you have is this. And the problem is when you bring this part forward, you have this deep mentolabial fold. So in a patient like this, the correct procedure is a sliding genioplasty and moving it forward, go a little bit more forward. So you can see how that forward and down opens up that fold. Go back to normal. Whereas a chin implant would just do this, and it almost looks like a diving board. So that's a frequently misdiagnosed situation.
So here is the real protocol. If your jaw is hidden, get lean. If your posture is, fix it. If you are mouth breathing, correct it. If your muscles are underdeveloped, strengthen them. If you need orthodontic intervention, do it intelligently. If the issue is structural, accept that only structural solutions exist. For those younger than 16, prioritize airway, diet, hormones, and posture. You can consult an orthodontist specializing in growth guidance. Consider functional appliances if discrepancy is significant. For those older than 18 with recessed, poor airway, consult an orthodontist who works with a surgeon. Discuss MSE for nasal breathing, orthodontic decompensation, plus orthognathic surgery. This is the gold standard comprehensive treatment. If it's moderate recession with good airway, consider orthodontics with or without MSE for mild arch expansion, or isolated genioplasty if the discrepancy is primarily chin deficiency with acceptable dental occlusion. Start with the foundational load, then you can consider orthopedics and maxillofacial surgery. It requires money and time. The ROI will depend entirely on your starting point. That's why it's hard to just give general advice when it comes to surgery. Subscribe to the channel and let me know what I missed in the comments and your thoughts on this topic. Try improving what you can, and make peace with what you can't. Thanks for watching.